Oh my God. I was just in such a food coma, guys. Such a food coma. Hey, beautiful people, LosingDrea here, and I'm coming to you guys, well, barely. I just woke up. I thought I was going to die earlier, and I have to do this video now in the moment while this is all fresh in my mind, because if I don't, somebody else is going to have to suffer the way I just suffered. Let me tell you what, I'm not going to mention any names, but I'm going to definitely mention some so-called no cheese chaffle recipe going around, talking about make you a chaffle that's like a Wonder Bread. Let me tell you what, there is nothing like my childhood Wonder Bread. Definitely not this thing. And what the recipe called for basically is just enough to make one of those little Dash mini cooker chaffles in the first place. Of course, I doubled it up because I thought, well, I'll make 2 chaffles in my Belgian waffle chaffle maker that I normally make, because I'll take 3 eggs to 2 servings of mozzarella shredded cheese, and it makes me 2 chaffles, 2 big fluffy chaffles. Okay. This recipe that I got, first of all, called for way too much salt. And I don't know if that was a mistake on the person who I watched this from's fault. However, I cut down on the amount of salt almost immediately, even though I was doubling up their recipe. And their recipe would have not have covered but half of my Belgian waffle maker. Now, my Belgian waffle maker does not make a square waffle, so when I speak in halves, I speak of a round Belgian waffle that has an X in the middle and has these like triangular or circular outside triangles. So I doubled up this recipe. And what I'm going to talk about is that recipe versus the normal recipe that I've been eating for quite a long time now, since like September when I found my waffle maker or whatever it was, and then this so-called recipe. And I'm going to compare the two side by side and show you why. I guess for people who can't have cheese, it's possibly the better alternative. I now am probably have an allergy to almond flour because I haven't been eating it, being carnivore. So I'm stating all that as a disclaimer, as well as the fact that I'm not using this video to attack any one person in particular. I am doing it solely as a scientific, be aware kind of video, so that nobody else goes through what I just went through. And why do I feel like my hair is like sticking out on the side here? Because it is. And just be careful, guys. Okay, be careful, because not everything you see, all these recipes and people doing fat bombs this and fat bombs that and all these different recipes, especially now around the holidays, people are going to look at these kind of things like I did and think, oh, there's a better alternative. Or, oh, here's something that's more bread-like and I can maybe use that and make something and enjoy a more traditional holiday meal. If you have not been consuming certain products for a certain number of time, chances are that you are no longer immune, get that word that I put in there, immune to those ingredients, to those products. And I believe that is the issue here in my case. I not only had severe gastrointestinal issues immediately after eating what I ate, but I was severely hungry to the point of let me binge and eat whatever I can get my hands on, whether it's keto or not. I could not stop myself. I had no control whatsoever. And then my immediate thought was, I cannot keep my eyes open. Like if I had been a diabetic and just slipped into a diabetic coma. I couldn't keep my eyes open. I fought it for a while, but I needed sleep. And this is just after having woken up only a few hours prior, and I was wide awake and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I don't know what came over me, guys. Well, I do know what came over me. It was almond flour. It had to be. I can't say that baking powder and mayonnaise would have been the end-all to be-all that gave me what I experienced and what I'm now still experiencing. I'm blowing up over here, and it isn't my YouTube channel. I'll just say that. First of all, let me explain something to anybody out there with this clickbaity titles that they have with their recipes. I don't care what it is. Be very, very careful of that, especially if you're a new person to keto, especially if you're somebody who's just recently found out keto, no matter where you found it. I mean, I always tell everybody, do your research. Everybody's different. What works for some person doesn't work for the other person. What happened to me might not happen to you. All these different things. But if you are like me, and I'm a 39-year young woman without a gallbladder, I can now eat eggs successfully without having any issues, gastro-wise or anything. Let me say that because in the very beginning, post-op, out of the hospital, I tried to immediately get right back on my keto diet since the hospital had their sad diet they were feeding me and knocked me out of ketosis in the hospital because there's just no way to just have them feed you meat or things that would have been healthier and got me back on my feet earlier. We'll say that. And let me say that anything chawful has the ch before the awful to replace the wa, like Wonder Bread or waffle, for a reason, because it's a chawful because it has cheese in it. If there is no cheese in it, it is not and should not be called the chawful, okay? If it has flour and mayo in it, it should be called an almond flour or a coconut flour and mayo waffle. Just saying. So don't let the appearance of titled recipes also affect your thoughts and cloud your mind with what you think you can or cannot have. That being said, what I'm going to share with you today, and I wasn't going to share the exact recipe because if anybody is out there who made that same recipe, who vlogged about that same recipe or blogged about that same recipe or just wrote somewhere about that same recipe or even hand wrote it and handed it to me recipe. I'm not pointing fingers, okay guys, because we're all out here and we're all experimenting every single day. If you're like me, I've been on my ketogenic journey since January 8th of 2017, guys. So I'm going on 3 years this January, come January 2020. I'll be 3 years on keto. I'm 153 days today, I believe. Yes, 152 days today on Carnivore. With maybe Ketovore. Because I have been eating a few things that are not exactly considered carnivore because I do add sauces sometimes, certain things that a carnivore would not add into their diet. So keep that in mind. But the recipe is as follows, and as I'm talking, I'll put the recipe here on the screen so you can see. And this recipe that the person made was for a small dash cooker, and it called for 1/8 of a teaspoon of baking powder, 1 tablespoon of mayonnaise, 1 tablespoon of almond flour, and 1 teaspoon of salt. That is the questionable part there, too. 1 teaspoon of salt is a heck of a lot of salt for just this amount of batter. And 1 egg, okay? So, again, you see it on the screen. That's what they called for. I followed this recipe, doubled it up, but did not use that much salt. I know baking. I don't think it had anything to do with the quality of the actual waffle after it was made, because I made a bready-like, which came out dense, waffle. It did not even fill the whole cavity. And what I used was the 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. I used a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I used 2 tablespoons of mayo, 2 tablespoons of almond flour, which on my package, which I use the super fine almond flour that is bleached and all that kind of stuff from Great Value. I say that because if you go and look at different ingredients of different almond flours, depending on which one you use, some of them different in both calorie count and a few other ingredients, things in there and whatnot, including sugar. And then there's 2 eggs. Just doubled up the other recipe, but I omitted a whole teaspoon of salt and I cut that in half. And that's actually, like I said, double this recipe. So I'm stressing that because I know that we're supposed to eat salt and it's good for us and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think they mean that in the way of this kind of a recipe, because I don't think that this would have been palatable in any sense of the word to anyone, even a salt lover, had you used a whole teaspoon of salt. And then 2 teaspoons of salt in one huge way, which just would have been horrible, guys. Horrible. So keep in mind that only made 1 Belgian waffle. The calorie count on that came out to 410 calories, 37 grams of fat, 5.5 grams saturated fat, 2 grams of polysaturated fat, 4.5 grams of monosaturated fat, 15 grams protein, 2 grams of fiber, and thus 4 grams carbs, and if you subtract the fiber, 2 grams net carbs, and then 1 gram sugar. And it was a dense gastrointestinal mess. It came out, it looked beautiful. It really was pretty. And I'm not going to lie, it did have somewhat of a texture, more so cake-like for a waffle. But it was totally, to me, a very unnecessary situation. Of course, I don't have any problems with eating cheese, so I just thought, well, maybe it was a healthier version. I did not check these numbers against the ingredients prior to eating it. Maybe that would have been a good inclination to stay clear of it. That was just for 1. For 2, if I would have made 2 like I normally make when I eat what I eat, 120 calories, 74 grams of fat, 11 grams saturated fat, 4 grams polysaturated fat, 9 grams monosaturated fat, 30 grams of protein, 4 grams of fiber, 8 carbs, 4 net carbs, and 2 grams of sugar. Yeah. That's what 2 of those would have made. However, that being said, my regular chaffles, just eggs and cheese, okay? Any of you guys saw that video where I make one? I just put a little of the shredded mozzarella cheese. I use the Happy Farms from Aldi. I'm giving you what I use so you know what I compared from ingredient-wise, calorie-wise, nutrition fact-wise. 370 calories, 27 grams of fat, 11.5 grams saturated fat, 3.5 grams carbs, and 32 grams of protein. Versus 820 calories, 74 grams of fat, 11 grams saturated fat, 4 grams polysaturated fat, 9 grams monosaturated fat, 8 carbs, 4 net carbs. We're talking 3.5 carbs regardless with chaffles. There's no fiber in it, so it's just 3.5 grams of carbs. But you get another 0.5 gram of carbs net. Do you do net or do you do all? You don't know that your body is not a body that does not function in a way that some bodies do function, where you can subtract fiber and sugar alcohols from products and use net carbs. So, you know, we're talking gross carbs, 3.5, or 8 gross carbs. And then there's 32 grams of protein in the chaffles, 30 grams in the bad version. Not saying it's bad for everybody, guys, but it was bad for me. And 4 grams of fiber, which, again, is not in chaffles. And then you got 2 grams of sugar, which, again, you're not getting in chaffles. So the severe hunger and the gastrointestinal issues. And I'm going to stop there because my brain right now is just, It's all over the place. I can't think straight. I couldn't think straight earlier. I needed to go to sleep. I felt like I was walking like sideways or something. You know what I mean? Like definitely off kilter. Things were not as they should be, not even near what they should be. I've had cheats before. Actually, I just came back. I was coming off of a cheat because I had eaten at the Asian buffet kind of thing when I went away on my trip to Georgia. And then when I came back, I kind of had a little bit of a hard time getting back on track. And a couple things I shouldn't have eaten again. And I ate some fries. And I ate some fries when I was away. So, yeah, those things were much, much different. This feeling was nothing like those kind of cheats, guys. So, am I allergic to almond flour? It was suggested maybe my almond flour was bad. No, guys, if you're on carnivore, okay, and I suggested maybe this is the possibility in my case. If you are a carnivore, if you have been carnivore, if you have omitted certain foods from your diet and have not reintroduced them in any kind of way, be prepared what might happen to you next. It's not going to be pretty. With that said, be happy, be healthy, be beautiful, but just be you. Be the boss of your loss if you're on a weight loss journey, and I will definitely be seeing each and every one of you guys in my next video, which I don't know when that'll be because I might be in another food-induced coma because I haven't even recovered from this one. Bye, guys. Be blessed. Mwah. Hey guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you haven't already subscribed, please click the subscribe button down below and be sure to ring the bell so you can be notified of all new videos as I put them out to you, as well as if I go live.